What happens if Sam Darnold is good? Not just good, but like really good. He's taken command so far in mandatory minicamp. And I think it's a really good conversation to have. And it's one that has precedent where you have the incumbent first round pick and the guy in front of him just plays lights out and you have to make a decision. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about other news and notes from mandatory minicamp as well, including some residual stuff from the Justin Jefferson contract extension, a tight end that's standing out, and one that's moving to the position as well. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by Tyler Forness, publisher at The Sporting News, contributor on SKOL North's Purple Daily, publisher of Substack Run In Shooter, the host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top right corner, he is producer Dave. We're coming to you on a taped show Thursday because last night got a little chaotic. As you guys all know, we've got two dogs, and our resident dog Odie does not really care for the new dog that much, so we're working through some of his jealousy issues. And we had a dog trainer last night, so with me having a shift at the bar tonight, we're gonna have a little bit of fun and record on a Thursday afternoon. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a fantastic Thursday morning. We get the reveal of the new uniforms. I get to watch Starship take off and complete its mission all the way to landing. It's a wonderful day.
Sometimes I forget that you're a space nerd, and I think that's just cool as hell because space is bonkers, man. It is absolutely bonkers, but we're not here to talk about space. We're here to talk about Warriors and the Winter Warrior uniforms. Let's kind of start with that, Dave. I really thought they nailed the design. Yeah, of course, you have trolls from other fan bases making fun of the fact that, they're these cold uniforms. And the designers of the uniforms even said, like, we took out the gold because you want to get rid of like the warmth, the warm colors. Like, they're like, dog, you play in a dome. Well, so it's a color, dude.
We're still, our mascot or the team's named after Norsemen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where do the Norse come from? They come from Sweden and Finland and, all Northern Europe. What happens in Northern Europe, just like it happens in Minnesota? It gets cold. It gets snowy. We get icicles. It is a frigid spot. And we want to take that cold like we had back in the 70s out at the old Met and psychologically impose it on whoever we're playing. Mm-hmm. And in this case, will be the Chicago Bears, Week 15 on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, and it's really exciting. I thought some of the little details, you can kind of see the pictures, and that's why I'm not looking straight at the camera. They have on the sleeves like a built-in, like with the stripe, it's like almost like a Norseman ship in there. They have the silver, which complements, which makes it feel a little bit more cold, because when you think of snow, and then when you look at ice, a sheet of ice is more on the clear sheer side, where snow is just more basic white. So they complement each other incredibly well.
And there's only one Celtic knotwork on the back of the collar to bring that in. They did a good job with that.
The icicles with the numbers, the white helmet is something that people have been begging for a while. But I got to say, there's only one whiteout jersey that's better. And that's the Cincinnati Bengals with the white helmet. Just the tiger stripes, just good Lord. Like, this is close to that. It's not quite there.
Well,
but the Minnesota Vikings do uniforms better than anybody as a whole.
Well, I was talking with good friend of the show, Mr. Ted Glover of Vikings Report with Drew and Ted this morning. Back in the day, we used to have a reflective fabric that was silver that we had to wear on our uniforms at night. It was before they came out with the plastic, what we call disco belts, reflective belts. And it was for safety working on the flight line. You want to be seen when it's dark. And if a light shined on it, it just, boom, it reflected. It's like the white on a stop sign. It just, or a street sign. It popped. I'm wondering if there's some reflectivity stuff added to this. And I could see them turning down the lights because it's Monday night. They get ready to come out, announce the team, come out of the huddle.
Yeah.
And then the spots or the strobes are going, and you're just seeing flashes of the silver. I think it's going to be cool as shit.
It's going to be so cool, and I'm really excited about it. I think the uniforms as a whole are... The Vikings just don't miss. The only time they've missed was that unfortunate Brad Childress era, and the second they could get out of it, well, they did. And they created the uniforms that we have now, which are just absolutely tremendous. And I think this is just a slight, subtle change that's just going to make that winter whiteout game feel a little bit special. I don't think it's on the level of like the Penn State whiteout, because the Penn State whiteout is one of the most respected singular games on the college football schedule. If you are the whiteout game, you are in for an unfortunate treat. You are going to get your butt whipped. I still remember this would have been 5-6 years ago. Michigan, first play of the game, goes out and the whiteout crowd is going bonkers. It's like 7:00 on a Saturday night, and they had to call a timeout. First play of the game. You should already know the play. You should already have everything ready to go. No, they were so discombobulated they had to call a timeout. And if the Vikings can create that kind of atmosphere with these uniforms and that special game and mess with Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, oh, buddy, I'm all in. We'll see how that works.
You and me both, brother. You and me both.
All right. Let's kind of shift the conversation because we've seen quite a bit of things come out from rookie minicamp. Not rookie minicamp. I'm going to keep calling it that. I don't know why. Mandatory minicamp. The rookies are still there. But the big talking point is going to be about the quarterback position. JJ McCarthy is still like on that third string level. That's fine. Don't panic. It's okay that they're easing him in. And Sam Darnold's going to be the starter to start the year unless McCarthy all of a sudden in training camp shows up and looks like a Norse god. And it's okay. It's year one. If we're dealing with this in year two where he's still third string, then we can hit the panic button. Right now, business as usual. They're working on fixing some mechanical stuff. And when you fix mechanics, you're going to have some inconsistencies because you're still working through it. It's just like some of the things they're doing is like, hey, go right with your left hand. It's going to take you a while. But once you figure it out, you're going to be just fine. And that's kind of how McCarthy's dealing with some of this stuff. So let's talk about Sam Darnold. Judd Zulgad, friend of the show from Purple Daily and Score North, said that Sam Darnold looks good. And he looks like the unquestioned guy. And I want to propose this because I don't think it's necessarily a point that people are talking about enough, Judd. And I'm not even saying I believe it. I just think it needs to be talked about among the range of possibilities when it comes to Sam Darnold. What happens if he's really, really good? What happens if he's like a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback with this new organization, great coaching staff, and excellent supporting cast? What do you do? What do the Vikings do in that scenario? Because that in itself is such an intriguing thing. There's this whole adage, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. But this wouldn't be a situation where it's Tim Couch and Kelly Holcomb for the 2002 Cleveland Browns. This would be, you have your guy of the future who you're not rushing, and you have your incumbent, Sam Darnold, who's playing out of his mind. Well, what do you do in that situation, Dave? What do you do moving forward to 2025?
You continue to plan. They did it up in Green Bay with Jordan Love. As I talked with Kevin Smith on the Call Sheet podcast, which you can find on Fans First Sports Network feeds, that the Vikings have a plan for JJ McCarthy. They are working the plan. That's all you can ask. Work the plan. hopefully succeed with the plan, have JJ achieve those certain check boxes that he needs to achieve. Now, if he gets there and he's ready to go, then we have a discussion. But before then, Sam Darnold, if he comes out and just balls out, which will be a first if that happens, right? Even if you take the best Sam Darnold, it's hard to see him getting into that elite quarterback status. But if he does, that'll be a wonderful problem for Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell to deal with. Can they postpone the maturity of J.J. McCarthy? Or can they find a different solution?
So I'll push back a little bit on the Jordan Love thing, because I think it's a different scenario when you have a Hall of Fame incumbent and you have Aaron Rodgers. So I think that that in itself is a little bit different, just because he was the entrenched guy for so long. So Darnold signed the 1-year, $10 million deal to be the bridge guy. And I think that's what makes this a little bit, for lack of a better term, more murky. And I want to relate it to a scenario that happened with the Chargers. Chargers, 2001 NFL draft. They had the first overall pick. They weren't 100% sold on Michael Vick. Now, in today's day and age, I think everybody would have been sold on Michael Vick, the player. But 2001, it was a very, very different league. So they traded back to 5th overall, and they got a decent package, and then they took LaDainian Tomlinson. Well, with the first pick in the second round, they took Drew Brees. And Brees, we know, and he's going to end up being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But at that point, Brees, his first couple years, he was okay-ish, very up and down. And in the 2004 NFL draft, they had the first overall pick again. They took Eli Manning, traded for Phillip Rivers, got extra draft capital from the Giants, and the rest is history. So 2004, Drew Brees is in a contract year. Balls out. I believe he made the Pro Bowl. So now the Chargers are looking at themselves, okay, we've got essentially the first overall pick here, because that's the pick they had Rivers was taken for. Do we go with Rivers, or do we keep Drew Brees after he just absolutely balled out and he looks to be like a legitimate quarterback? What do we do? And I think that scenario is something that you can kind of look at for a comparison point if Darnold just all of a sudden takes off, because he just turned 27 years old yesterday, June 5th. He just turned 27. He has been in the league since 2018. So this will be year 7 in the NFL, which is just bonkers to think about. And he was the 3rd overall pick. It's obvious. It's always been obvious he has arm talent. He just hasn't been able to piece it together. And I think a lot of that has to do with the surroundings. And the surroundings just compile, and then they make little things worse. And then you can lose confidence. And I think a lot of that compiled and was the reason why Darnold's in the position he's in and not paid like $45-50 million a year. But
what decision did San Diego make when Drew Brees balled out?
They ended up putting the franchise tag on him. They kept him for 1 more year. Drew Brees started the whole year until it was either game 15 or 16, middle of the first half. There's a fumble. He dives for it. His arm gets cocked back and completely shreds his shoulder. That kind of made the decision for them that Rivers is going to be the next guy. And Brees goes into the offseason and they basically said, hey, Dr. James Andrews, like, this is one of the best surgeries I've ever done. Well, we found out less than a year ago that the surgery that he did allowed him to come back and play, but it essentially ruined his arm for like the rest of his life. And he's talked about how he can't really throw a football anymore. And you could see the deterioration of that arm strength over the course of the last few years of his career. It was to a point where it was egregiously bad at the end. And because he had that kind of devastating arm injury, the Chargers were kind of like, okay, well, we can just move on. We can go with our top pick. But they kept him. And they kept him, and he started the whole next year. And I think that's the closest comparison point that we can find when we're having the conversation about Sam Darnold. What happens if he's good? Do they bring him back for another year? Do they end up like trying to do that? Do they just go right to JJ McCarthy? I think that in itself is such an interesting conundrum. I'm in the process of trying to find what do you call it?
But we're talking what ifs right now and giving an example where it actually did happen. Do you believe Sam Darnold can play that well?
Believe he can? Yes. Will he? I don't know. That's the thing. It's all such a what if scenario because nobody really knows. This year, the franchise tag salary for the NFL for quarterbacks, $32.1 million. Sorry, that was in 2023. And that number, I believe, went up to about 35. Like, that is a very, very high number. It's not like back in the day where you could kind of get away with it. You could kind of franchise tag, oh, they're still going to be paid, but it's not going to be like crippling to the salary cap.
Well, even at 35, the average top quarterback salaries now are 50.
I know. It's crazy. Okay. $38.3 million for quarterbacks. $38.3 million. A bonkers number to bring back Sam Darnold. Year. But what happens if he, like, Pro Bowl in itself is kind of a joke. What happens if he's like voted the Pro Bowl starter? And I think that's like a benchmark. That would mean he's the best quarterback in the NFC. How do you get rid of that guy? That's the difficult conundrum here. How do you get rid of a guy who played at that kind of level? It makes it for a very, very tough conversation if you're the Minnesota Vikings. Like, well, we drafted this guy that we thought was the future. Well, maybe Sam Darnold's the future because look at what he did. And maybe you do franchise tag him and you give him an opportunity to do it again. Now, could you consider it a waste of salary cap space? Sure. I think there's an argument to be made that if you have a top overall pick making average annual value of like $5.5 million per year, that you don't sign a guy like Darnold. But if you have a quarterback, it's really hard to let them go. And I think that dynamic is going to be really interesting if it happens. And this is all hypothetical. And this is what the offseason is for, trying to identify potential scenarios and talking through it and seeing, okay, well, if this happens, what do you do? Well, then this would happen. And then this doesn't happen because that happened. And I find that just very interesting, where we have to be prepared for the idea that Sam Darnold just might be really, really good. And it just may have taken him a while. You know what? It took Geno Smith a while too. And I'm not saying it's a one-to-one, but the idea of the quarterback renaissance, it can happen. It happened with Ryan Tannehill. It happened with Smith. Maybe it happens with Sam Darnold too. Will it? I don't know. We got to play the games first. Anybody can look good in minicamp, but looking good in minicamp is the start. And they believe in this guy. They didn't just sign him to be a bridge. They're like, we think we can win football games with Sam Darnold. That's why we brought him in. Second highest bridge quarterback contract at $10 million. The only higher one is Gardner Minshew, and Minshew is signed to be the starter, not as a bridge quarterback, because he's not bridging to anybody. So that's a little bit of a different scenario. Like, it's just so fascinating. What happens if Darnold's really good? Dave, I'm going to be really intrigued to find that out.
Well, our buddy Judd has been at the press availabilities at the minicamp and OTAs before that. Mm-hmm. He's pretty much said Sam's looks dead on so far, which is a good thing. We want that as Vikings fans. We want our quarterback to look good so far. There's a lot of time to go. They're going to come back the end of July, August, and then we go into training camp. And we'll see there, and then we get to see some exhibition games, and it's going to be fun.
Oh, we're going to have so much fun. I can't wait for the season to really get rolling. We're going to have a great time, and you're going to want to make sure that you follow along. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to get all the notifications. Because, hey, with the off season, we're still going to try to do 2 shows a week, but those shows may be a little bit modified just due to scheduling. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that. Plus, if you missed it yesterday, Dave did host the NFC North show, Who Will Be King, on this very channel. You won't want to miss that. And we're going to have a lot more stuff. And I'm going to try and put out a couple just podcasts, just like, hey, I just want to sit down and talk for 10, 15 minutes. And we'll throw that up there. Because you know what? 10, 15-minute podcast, pretty easy to listen to. So you won't want to miss out on anything that we are doing. And we're going to have some fun here on Vikings First and SKOL. Let's talk about a couple more notes.
I was about to say, yesterday on Who Will Be King, biggest topic of discussion across the division was Justin Jefferson. You teased in your opener, there's a little few things you want to talk about him.
I did. One of the big things with the Justin Jefferson contract is it's historic. It kind of breaks the mold of receiver contracts. It kind of sets a new precedent. But Justin Jefferson set a new precedent with everything he's done in his career. So they're equal to each other. It's not an overpay. You're going to see people bad faithing talking about, like they paid way too much. I've already seen a couple of Packers people say, well, we have an entire receiving corps for $12 million. Good luck paying them, buddy. You're going to have to pay them. What are you going to do? Give all of them $15 to $20 million? Nope. Like, it's not always that simple. Plus, Justin Jefferson is historically good. And you have Jordan Addison making an average of like $5 million a year as number 2. And he's going to make that for another 3 years. Jefferson is a phenomenal football player. He's the best non-quarterback in the NFL. Going into 2023, he was the best non-quarterback in the NFL, according to his peers, ranking only behind Patrick Mahomes as best players in the NFL. Like, Jefferson, his production has been historic. He's made some of the biggest catches in the biggest moments. That Buffalo Bills catch, that touchdown in 2021 against Green Bay Packers. Like, he's done so much. And I wouldn't worry about how much this contract is going to cost when you consider and look at so many elements about who Jefferson is and what he does and how he's impacted the team. And another thing that we don't necessarily think about is the intangibles and the off the field stuff. Rick Spielman has a show on CBS. It's called With the First Pick podcast, draft podcast. And they talk a lot about the Vikings because Rick Spielman has a wealth of knowledge about the team. And he talked about how, like, some of the little things, the work ethic, the mentality of Justin Jefferson just set him apart. And how when he walks onto the field, it's just different. Didn't even talk about how talented he is in that clip. It was just about how the little things just matter. And he does them so well. I think that's a really good point. Something we don't talk about. And then half the press conference was talking about him as a leader. Kwesi adofo-mensah, Kevin O'Connell, and Justin Jefferson all mentioned the fact that his leadership was a really big factor in this decision to extend him. And Jefferson believes that, hey, when you're making this kind of money, you need to be a leader. And I'm ready to really step up in that role. Because remember, 2023 was his first year as a captain. And now you have 3 captains in Jordan Hicks, Danielle Hunter, and Kirk Cousins all have left the team. Who's going to really step into that hole? And that looks to be Justin Jefferson. And he's ready for it. He's ready to help try and lead this team to a Super Bowl. And he has it. He just has it. He's a special person, a special player. And you're going to see a lot from him here moving forward. And I think that's really cool.
I agree. I think we've got somebody, like you said, the word special. I think he's going to be beyond special. And that's not just for the Minnesota Vikings. He's that way for the NFL. Look what he's done for flag football and all the other things he's done. He brings fans into the league. Now, of course, we want them doing the gritty and being fans for our Minnesota Vikings, but just the fact that he's there doing what he's doing has helped this sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about Jefferson being here for the long haul. I think it's great for the team. I think it's great for the fan base. I think it's great for the city. Jefferson is just a special type of player. And all this talk about, receiver contracts are getting so expensive that, maybe they're going to turn like running backs. Dog, no. Yeah, you might not sign a wide receiver to $25 million contracts. Like, you're not going to sign a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster to a $15 million a year contract. But you're going to sign the great ones. You're going to sign Jefferson. You're going to sign A.J. Brown. You're going to sign guys like DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin. You're going to sign a Nico Collins. Nico Collins is making $10 million less a year than Justin Jefferson. Yeah, you're going to feel okay about that. Now, would you sign Brandon Ayuk to $35 million? I think that's where you can have the conversation. Those fringe elite guys that want elite money. No, you don't give them elite money. You let somebody else give them elite money. I'd give CeeDee Lamb close to Jefferson money. I'd give him 33, 34. I think here's the thing. I think CeeDee Lamb's really, really good. In that class, I had CeeDee Lamb as the number one wide receiver. I loved CeeDee Lamb, and I still think he's great. I don't think he's as good as Justin Jefferson. I think he should be paid accordingly. $1 million or $2 million less per year than what Jefferson got, and I think you're in the ballpark of what CeeDee Lamb is. Jamar Chase, I think you can make a better argument that he could make more than Jefferson. I wouldn't, but I get it. And I think the wide receiver contract thing is going to be really interesting to watch moving forward. I don't think it's as black and white as, just don't pay wide receivers because you can get them in the draft. Well, not all of them hit. What happens if you drafted Jalen Reagor? What happens if you draft a Laquan Treadwell? What happens if you draft a Henry Ruggs? Now, Ruggs didn't flame out of the NFL because he was a bad football player. He committed vehicular manslaughter and was convicted and is serving 3 to 10 years. That's a different story. But what happens if they bust? That's the whole point of this. If you have an elite guy, keep him. That's what the money's for. Jefferson deserved the money. He got paid big time. And there's the stats to prove that he's worth it. So that, to me, that's it. It's I'm just really annoyed by some of the discussion and how bad faith it is. Not everybody's bad faith, but there's been a lot of it out there, and it's driving me nuts.
And one thing that the Vikings have that the Cowboys or the Bengals do not is that they're not paying massive money to their quarterback. So if you tie in massive money to the wide receiver one and massive money to the quarterback, then the rest of the team is going to suffer. But as of right now, and through this contract, it can be afforded. It's easy. He deserves it. We get it. We don't have to worry about paying $50 million for a quarterback on top of that, unless Sam Darnold balls out, and then we're like, we'll see from there. But we are in a good position to do that. Now, I've gotten it on my end too. You overpaid him. Packers fan Christian Watson has a bigger upside than Justin Jefferson ever will. And it's like, okay, there's all sorts of stuff that we're getting. But I was asked by one of our new shows coming on to Fans First Sports, one of our mini Philadelphia Eagles shows. This one's called The Link lineup. They asked, what do you think of the the signing, Dave, and I said it's worth every damn penny because it is. What he means to this team, what he means to the league, how he affects the Vikings offense and producing points is beyond any other position on the football field next to the quarterback. And so you paid the man. Now, defenders, top line defenders, whether it be edge rushers or interior defensive tackles that can push the pocket or shut down corners, they always seem to get, that high pay because they were considered so important. But it turns out they can be shut down in particular game plans. Whereas if the wide receiver, all he needs for him to make an impact is the quarterback to throw him the football. And he can make a bigger impact than those guys can. And so that's why we're seeing the movement of we now have a wide receiver as the number one non-quarterback versus Nick Bosa.
Yeah. I think the quarterback thing is interesting because there was a lot of speculation from fans. I don't even think we really saw it much from analysts. Well, we did from the national media, but the national media didn't follow the story very closely. Or they didn't try to. Or they didn't care. And they just wanted to push their own narratives for ratings purposes because the Vikings were never going to trade him. They were steadfast in that belief. They were never going to trade him. They never even had a conversation of it. Kwesi adofo-mensah does not tell you things in press conferences. He's very vague in how he answers questions, and that's by design. He doesn't want to let you in on any secrets. All general managers do that. But you know what he did tell you? Straight up, we've never even thought about trading Justin Jefferson. That should tell you, hey, they don't want to trade Justin Jefferson, right, ESPN? Nope, but they still ran with it. They still ran with it all the time.
Yep, and when teams called during the draft, they got, no, we're not trading Justin Jefferson. Thanks for inquiring.
And it wasn't even one of those things where they set a stupid high price because you'll do that too. Well, we don't want to trade this guy, but if they offer us this absurd deal, okay, we'll do it. Like 3 firsts, 3 seconds. Yeah, give us that and we'll talk. Nobody was going to do that. But they didn't even go that far. They just straight up said no. And if you straight up say no, that you mean business then. And I think that matters here. I think it matters. And I think it also matters, who are you listening to with your analysis? Who are you listening to? And who are you trusting to break this all down? The ones who know or the ones who are just trying to drive ratings? Because yes, we would love to drive ratings up here at Vikings First and SKOL, but we're never going to be disingenuous bullshit with what we talk about. Because we believe that you're smarter than that. We believe that you're better than that, which is why we don't do it. And which is why we will call things out when we see them. And the way the national media handled this, I thought was really poor. I thought was, I'm not going to call it unprofessional because I don't know like the entire process that went into it, but it was brutal. And I hated it. And I thought it stunk. But it is what it is. We will move on. And the Minnesota Vikings have their guy in Justin Jefferson for the long term. And I think that's important, Dave. Couple more notes before we get out of here today. We're going to finish off with the tight end position. N'Keal Harry, wide receiver, has moved to tight end. Now, this is an interesting one because N'Keal Harry last year is a 230-pound wide receiver. He's already gained upwards of 10 pounds. So he's at 240. And if he gains another 10, he'll be at 250. And that's kind of like the perfect weight. He's a really good inline blocker. Like, I don't know if he can handle edge rushers, but he can handle linebackers. He can handle cornerbacks, and he can move them. So the idea of putting him at tight end makes a lot of sense. Will he be successful there? Don't count on it. Like, making a position change in your mid-20s, unless it's like from corner to safety, isn't exactly one that you want to bet on working. It would be kind of an outlier. But the idea makes sense. And especially if he's going to be like a hybrid, like wide tight end, where he's going to line up a lot of the slot and maybe you'll move him into the backfield. Like, just don't ask him to block edge rushers. And I think that maybe you'll have something there. We'll find out more in training camp. But Dave, I really did think this was an interesting one because of how much he struggled to create separation on the outside, but he has a big, physical, strong, imposing frame that can be utilized to your advantage.
I agree. I think it's a career-saving move for him because he is so well liked. And the fact that, he has tight end size or the ability to get there. And if he can make that transition, he's already got the pass catching chops for it, which is good. Most tight ends migrate out from the offensive line and become good blocking tight ends. We have a whole room full of them. Oliver, Munt, we get those. Hawkinson's our only true pass catching specialist, if you want to call it that way, as a tight end. If N'Keal Harry can convert into that, one, it's going to be a fantastic story. And two, it will give us depth. I look forward to the project. I look forward to if they can convert him into a good pass-catching tight end. We'll find out. He may not even make the team, but we're going to find out if he can make that transition. And I root for the kid. I hope he does.
Yeah. I think the idea is interesting. We'll see how it works in practice, but it's going to be a difficult transition. It's difficult for tight ends to transition to tight end from college to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll find out, but it's interesting. One more thing about the tight end position, Dave. Really fascinating that they signed Robert Tonyan late in the process, and he's been playing really well. Wes Phillips talked about it during an OTA presser that he looked really impressive, and they were really impressed with his workout. Well, he is performing, and he's performing well. I think that idea is really, really good to bring in a guy like Tonyan. Tonyan's not an elite player. He's a good player. He had 11 touchdown receptions from Aaron Rodgers when he was with the Packers in 2020. Torn ACL in 2021 kind of limited him that year, and in 2022. 2023, he had a cup of coffee with the Bears behind Cole Kmet, but that whole offense was a disaster. And with TJ Hawkinson out for at least the first few weeks, he might even return before the bye, which I think is bonkers. I think it would be a little bit ambitious for him to return after the bye, because it would be right after that right at 9 months. Like, I know it's an ACL, but they had to wait a full month because of damage to the MCL to even do the surgery. So I'm intrigued to kind of see what that looks like. And I will say that Tonyan is a really good pass catcher down the field, and he could make some waves for the Minnesota Vikings in that realm. Now, how well will he do? I have no idea. But I think that element is going to be a good addition to the Vikings, especially because, look, Kevin O'Connell called Johnny Munt the best third tight end in football, but he would be tight end 1 until Hawkinson comes back, because they're going to keep Josh Oliver in his role, because nobody else can do Josh Oliver's role like Josh Oliver. And it's not an insult on Oliver. It's easier to fill Hawkinson's role with the players they have on the roster than it would be to fill Oliver's role if he took Hawkinson's. So I think he'll probably do some more 11 personnel stuff than he did previously. But 12 personnel, he's going to have his own role. And the likes of Munt or Tonyan are going to replace Hawkinson in that spot. So I'm really intrigued to see if Tonyan can kind of take that next step. Can he be the guy he was in 2020 and really make a major impact? If he does, I think it's going to be a massive, massive benefit to the Vikings. It's going to be something where they can take that next step and thrive. I don't know if they'll be able to do anything with consistency, but I like the idea of bringing him in on a vet minimum deal, because you know what? If it doesn't work, you cut him. But it seems like it's working, and that's a great bet to make. This is where you should take shots like this if you are a general manager. Bring in a guy who's had success and see if you can extract more out of him.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that is going to be it for our show today. Thank you guys so much for joining us on a Thursday to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Minicamp is done. I'll have more on Purple Access with Judd Zulgad here. It may already be up by the time you hear this. If not, it'll be up Saturday. They kind of decide when to post it on the fly. It's either Thursday afternoon or Saturday morning. But you'll be able to catch me there in Purple Daily on Draft every Monday. Don't forget, 2 Old Bloggers will be back on Sunday afternoon, 4:05 p.m. Central Time. You'll not want to miss it. And keep an eye on the podcast feed. I'm probably just going to hang out and just shoot the crap. And I'll be doing some extra stuff over there, along with some potential daily openers, which Dave did one for the Justin Jefferson contract extension. And I'll be posting shorts on YouTube as well. You won't want to miss any of that. Easiest way to do that, like, comment, subscribe. Ring the bell, and it sends you everything we do when it posts. Because it's going to be the easiest way to just know when we have stuff coming. Until then, I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching the Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone! This has been a Vikings First and SKOL production, partnered with the Fans First Sports Network.